I just want to be honest with you. I've got a bit of a frustration going here because I feel a lot of deja vu in 2026. It feels a lot like the summer of 2020. And what I'm realizing is that not everyone in my audience, and certainly not everyone in your lives, have been really paying attention to politics and news for 5 years. It's hard to believe that it's been 5 years. It feels like all of that just happened yesterday. That was a very tenuous moment. We had COVID. We were still trying to figure out what was going on. May of 2020, when George Floyd died, while Derek Chauvin was kneeling on his back, we were just kind of waking up to the fact that 2 weeks to slow the spread wasn't really going to happen. People were starting to get very feverish about things like masks. We were getting a lot of propaganda. It was almost like Trump's enemies realized that they could harness this as a tool to try to help him lose the election. And then George Floyd happens, the riots happen, the protests. And of course, you remember that right away, the reaction by most people, especially in the evangelical world, was to condemn racism, to condemn police brutality, to condemn white supremacy, to almost apologize to their Black friends, to post the Black square, maybe put their Christian spin on it, but to at least acknowledge the narrative that George Floyd and other people who are detained by the police or who are killed by the police who look like George Floyd are treated in that way because not only the cop is racist, but because our system is racist, because our institutions are racist. And that is why it is justified to be outraged about George Floyd dying, but to be completely silent about someone like Justine Damon or Tony Timpa, who also died at the hands of the police, but they didn't have the right skin color. And so they didn't point to the systemic white supremacy, the institutional racism that has plagued our country since its very beginning. We had the 1619 Project, and I was so disappointed and so frustrated and a little bit scared as seemingly someone on an island is a white evangelical woman who, when I looked at my feed filled with Black squares, said, well, I don't think I'm going to do that because I don't have any clue that racism had anything to do with this. I'm not seeing any indication from this situation that Black lives don't matter in this country. And so I'm not going to repeat the mantras. And I'm not trying to say, gosh, I was just so wise. I was not the only one. I had been doing this for an amount of time, and I had seen the media lie, especially when it came to racial narratives. I remembered Michael Brown, and I was like, this is all too familiar. They lied about hands up, don't shoot back in 2014, 2015. The DOJ admitted to that. The Washington Post admitted to that. Why should this be any different? And I started to push back very gently back then, but push back against those popular narratives. It was very, very unpopular to do that. I was absolutely lambasted by fellow Christians. A lot of you know their names, very popular Christians and influencers and Bible study leaders who probably would have called themselves evangelical or conservative evangelicals, who said that I was being racist, that I was being mean-spirited, that I, of course, didn't have enough empathy. And mind you, I was not even as direct as I am now about that. I was simply saying, we don't know that racism is a part of this. And there are people of other skin colors who have also had unfortunate interactions with the police. And I don't think we're getting the facts here. And oh, by the way, I don't think burning down a Jiffy Lube is going to help things. And I'm not sure about stealing a plasma screen TV. I don't know if that counts as justice. Like, I just didn't get along with this, like, riots are the voice of the unheard. What do you mean they're unheard? Like, that doesn't even make sense. That's just not true. That's not politically true. I mean, Black Americans have a large segment of the vote. They almost always vote Democrat. Barack Obama won his election 2 years in a row. It's not true that these voices are politically unheard, but that was used by Christians to justify violence and to check themselves and to check their privilege and to commit to being an anti-racist, which, as Ibram X. Kendi said, means discriminating against white people today. And I had read too much Thomas Sowell and too much Walter Williams at that point in my life to buy into that. But I'm telling you, for real, it was really hard. It would have been so much easier at the time to shut up about that. and to just not say anything, to just post the black square. Honestly, we've all forgiven the people who posted a black square out of ignorance then. I really have. And it would have been fine. I probably wouldn't have lost any followers if I hadn't said anything, and I would have been able to keep those very, important connections within the evangelical world, and maybe invited more to their conferences if I had just kind of stayed out of that. But it puts a bug in my craw when people suspend their judgment, when people suspend their discernment, that I see them exercise in other areas, their intellect, that I see them use to defend the Bible or to tell the truth in other areas. But when it comes to these very emotional so-called social justice issues like race or like social justice, they no longer think. Because, and here's the reason why. One, it's because a lot of people have really big hearts, and I think that's good. Like, it's good to have big hearts. It's good to be compassionate. You don't want to get hard-hearted, and you don't want to get calloused. Like, I am totally with you on that. All people, no matter their background, no matter their nationality or citizenship status or made in the image of God, we care about who they are. We care about their hearts and souls and how they're treated and all of that. That's absolutely true. So that's one part of it. But let's just be honest about the other part of it. Is that, and I'll get to how all of this relates in 2026. You're probably already seeing it. This is all just like coming to my mind as it's stream of consciousness. That it is inconvenient to think when it comes to those issues, okay? It's inconvenient to think because if you let your mind start asking questions like, oh, what if this is not really true? Like, what if America isn't really systemically racist? Like, what if George Floyd wasn't actually murdered by Derek Chauvin? What if Derek Chauvin wasn't actually a racist? Like, what if, like, all of this is a big lie? And all of these corporations and all of these politicians and all of these pastors that I trust and all of these friends that I love, they're buying into lies and they're very tied to it. And they're actually saying that they're going to basically excommunicate anyone who doesn't agree with them. Well, if I start thinking, then I might realize that they're all believing a lie. And if I realize they're believing a lie, well, then I'm going to feel some kind of obligation and burden to tell them the truth. And if I tell them the truth, they're going to be mad at me. And then that puts me outside of social circles. That cuts off my friendships. That makes it really hard with my family. Most people, and I would say women especially, who are naturally compassionate and naturally relational, are not willing to do that because it's very uncomfortable. And naturally, like, we don't like discomfort, myself included. But I don't know if it's just my personality, if it's how God made me. I know He made many of you like this and many of the guests that sit on my show in a variety of ways. It just bothers me. Like, it bothers me when smart people allow their feelings to take over. And so that's why I started talking about the statistics, the numbers, the arguments, the history when it came to these claims of systemic racism and systemic racism within the police system and these disparate views of justice and what biblical justice looks like versus what social justice looks like. And I was just one of many voices speaking up against this at the time. And we finally felt like in the past couple of years, we got them. Like, we got those people back, those people who were just lost to the propaganda of BLM and lost their minds during that time, like basically advocating for reparations and stuff. Okay, they seem to be walking it back. They're not as woke as they were back then. They're not sharing the ridiculous views. They're kind of at least quieting down on politics, which is honestly preferable. Like, it's preferable if you just don't talk about it, if you don't really know the other side of the story and you're not willing to research and all of that. Instead of, just speaking up when Trump does something wrong or when it's popular to do so or when the media tells you to do so, like, I would rather you just not say anything at all. And now we have these immigration stories. Now we have the Renee Good story, and I am seeing the same thing over and over again. We see a story about an old man who is being let out in his underwear, and people are saying, see, ICE is cruel. And I just want to say, you don't even know the context. You don't know who he is. He could have been an illegal alien from Guatemala and a sex predator. You have no idea, and you're out there defending this guy because someone put emotional music behind an Instagram video. You have no idea. And by the way, there seems to be multiple angles of this story. And that's enough for us to say, hang on, we don't really know what's going on. Maybe I shouldn't share that. Maybe that shouldn't change my political alignment because I don't know the other side of the story. The government says, which you shouldn't unconditionally believe the government, but the DHS says that guy was harboring a sex predator. and illegal aliens. And because he was in the home and refused to give his identification, they had to detain him temporarily, even though he is a citizen, and then release him. So that's one side of the story. At the very least, even if you don't want to buy that, you can say, okay, there are two competing narratives here. Maybe I shouldn't just unconditionally believe one. The same thing with this child. Like we see the story going around of this 5-year-old who I saw someone post that this child was used as bait to try to get his parents to come out so that ICE could detain them. That's the one side of the story. No sources cited, by the way, just that's what they claimed. Well, the government, again, take it as you will, says, no, that's not what happened. He was in the car with his parents. We were trying to detain his parents, and his parents fled on foot and abandoned the child. Okay, that tells me there are at least two competing narratives when it comes to this. Why would I just buy in to what the media says? Shouldn't buy into what the government says necessarily, but it should make us think. It should make us ask questions. It should make us pause and say, is this familiar? Because headline after headline in 2020 was sympathetic to those rioters while they were telling all of us not to go to church, by the way. They were supporting these mobs of people out there burning down gas stations. That was okay, but we couldn't go to church because it might spread COVID. Like these are the same people. These are the same journalists. This is the same media, and this is the same thing. Like think about for a second. Obama deported over 3 million people, okay? He holds the record right now. Maybe Trump will surpass him this term, we'll see, but he holds the record. Over 3 million people Obama deported. That's more than any other president in history. Do you think that under his direction, ICE was just sweet? Do you think that they didn't enter into churches and didn't enter into people's homes? Do you think it was all just like gentle and kind and just, and that's why you didn't see any protest? No, the reason you didn't see the social media posts, the reason you didn't see the headlines, the reason you didn't see the protests and riots is not because it was happening differently. It's because it was Obama and now it's Trump. That's the difference. So just know that you are being agitated by people who just don't like Trump. It's not that they care about migrants, they care about immigration, they care about justice. Maybe partly they do. They're only saying it now because it's Trump. They didn't even say it under Obama. Biden deported hundreds of thousands, if not a million, illegal aliens. He also had ICE operating under him. You didn't see any of this then. This stuff was happening then. It's because of Trump. Okay? And so, it just really bothers me how people just don't stop and ask questions. But is this true? I see smart people on my side of issues who think very critically when it comes to the media reporting on things like abortion or something else. And they'll say, well, that's probably not true because of this. And they'll dig into it. But then we'll just share headlines by the same media outlets without thinking, but are they telling the truth on this? So that's all I want. I don't want you to listen to me unconditionally. I don't want you to listen to the media or the government or any one person unconditionally. Okay? I want you to, when I tell you something, I want you to ask the same question that you would ask if you were reading the Washington Post or watching CNN or listening to Trump talk. And that is that true? Is that true? Is there more context to the story that I don't know? Or is there an alternative explanation? Am I being given all of the facts here? I want you to ask those questions to yourself when you are listening to me or to anyone else, because there are a lot of people out there who want you to be dumb. Know that, women. There's a lot of people out there who want you to be stupid because that behooves them. It's in their interest for women to be as stupid as possible. I don't want that. Okay? Even if you disagree with me, even if you are a liberal, know that the liberals who are talking to you want you to be stupid and they want you to feel your way through politics. I want you to be smart and think your way through politics. Even if you end up at a different conclusion than me, even if you never listen to my podcast again, I want you by the end of my podcast to feel like you are smarter and you at least have a direction to go in to study more and to be a thoughtful person. Okay? That's how I want you to navigate this. I want you to think, because women, you are not just feelers, okay? You are not led by your emotion. You are not stupid. You have been given a brain that is capable of critical thinking, capable of studying, capable of asking questions and being rational and reasonable. Do not prove the stupid manosphere people right by being an idiot. Think. Be compassionate, but don't allow that to suspend your discernment. Okay? So that's my little extemporaneous monologue, because we're going to go into the actual thing that I want to talk about, which is why women have veered to the left. This is the bug in my craw. This is part of why I do what I do, is because this irks me so much. I want better for our world, and I want better for women, especially Christian women.